had always been the type of person who believed rules were suggestions rather than requirements. At 28 years old, he had perfected the art of bending situations to his advantage, whether it was talking his way out of speeding tickets or convincing employers to overlook his frequent tardiness. His charming smile and quick wit had carried him through life, making him believe he was untouchable. Working as a sales representative for a mid-sized electronics company, had grown comfortable with his routine of cutting corners. He would inflate his expense reports, claiming meals that never happened and trips that were shorter than documented. His supervisor, Mrs. Williams, was nearing retirement and seemed more interested in maintaining peace than scrutinizing every detail. Took this as a green light to push boundaries further. The company's downtown office building was a sleek, modern structure with multiple floors housing various businesses. Security was handled by Meridian Protection Services, a company known for hiring experienced personnel who took their jobs seriously. The building had implemented new security protocols after a series of thefts in neighboring offices, including mandatory badge scans for after-hours access and detailed logs of all entry and exit times. James had been working security for Meridian for over 15 years. A former military police officer, he approached his job with the same discipline and attention to detail that had served him well during his 8 years of service. Unlike some guards who viewed their position as merely sitting behind a desk, James understood that security meant being observant, methodical, and always prepared for the unexpected. Every evening, James would conduct thorough rounds of the building, checking each floor methodically. He knew which employees regularly worked late, which offices should be empty by certain times, and which patterns of behavior were normal versus suspicious. His logbook was meticulous, recording everything from unusual sounds to lights left on in supposedly vacant areas. Had noticed James during his occasional late evenings at the office, but he had dismissed the guard as just another obstacle to navigate around. In his mind, security guards were typically older, less observant individuals who were more concerned with their smartphones than actually monitoring the building. He had no idea that James maintained detailed mental notes about every person who entered and exited the building. The opportunity that would change everything began innocently enough. Discovered that his company's storage room contained surplus electronics that had been written off as damaged or obsolete. These items were supposedly scheduled for disposal, but realized they could be easily sold online for significant profit. The storage room was located on the 3rd floor, far from the main reception area, and was rarely visited by management. Began his scheme gradually, taking small items that wouldn't be immediately missed. A few outdated smartphones here, some tablet accessories there. He would stay late under the pretense of catching up on paperwork, then slip into the storage room to collect items. His plan was simple: gradually accumulate valuable electronics, sell them through various online platforms, and pocket the money without anyone noticing. What didn't realize was that James had been documenting his behavior for weeks. The security guard had noticed that late-night stays didn't correspond with any major projects or deadlines. He observed that would arrive at normal times but leave unusually late, often carrying bags that seemed heavier when he departed than when he arrived. James began paying closer attention to movements throughout the building. He noticed that the young salesman would often take routes through the building that didn't make logical sense if he was simply going to his desk. Sometimes would take the elevator to the 3rd floor despite his office being on the 2nd floor. These patterns triggered James's professional instincts, honed by years of military and security experience. The storage room itself was equipped with a basic lock, nothing sophisticated, but it required a key that was supposedly restricted to management and maintenance staff. Had obtained his copy through a combination of charm and deception, convincing the facility's manager that he needed occasional access to retrieve old client presentation materials that were stored there. As confidence grew, so did his ambition. He began taking more valuable items and staying later to avoid any chance encounters with cleaning staff or other employees. He felt invincible, believing that his careful timing and charming personality would protect him from any consequences. In his mind, the items were going to be thrown away anyway, so what was the harm in profiting from waste? James, meanwhile, was building a comprehensive picture of his activities. He had started documenting specific times when accessed different floors, noting discrepancies between stated reasons for being in the building and his actual movements. The guard had also begun checking the storage room more frequently during his rounds, though he hadn't yet discovered any direct evidence of theft. The building's security system included cameras in common areas, but the storage room itself wasn't monitored by video surveillance, which had specifically confirmed before beginning his operation. However, what hadn't considered was that the hallway leading to the storage room was covered by cameras, and James had access to review footage when investigating unusual activities. His routine had become predictable. He would finish his regular work around 5 in the evening, then spend an hour creating the appearance of working late by shuffling papers and making unnecessary phone calls. Around 6:30, when the building was mostly empty, he would make his way to the storage room, quickly select items, and return to his office to pack them discreetly in his briefcase or laptop bag. The items was stealing included high-end wireless headphones, portable speakers, smartphone accessories, and occasionally small tablets or e-readers. He had established relationships with several online buyers who didn't ask too many questions about the origin of the products, allowing him to convert stolen goods into cash quickly and efficiently. James had begun timing his security rounds to coincide more frequently with late-night activities. The guard would position himself strategically to observe without being obvious, using his knowledge of the building's layout to monitor its movements. He had also started reviewing security footage from previous weeks, building a timeline of suspicious activities. The breakthrough came when James noticed that certain items from the storage room seemed to be missing during his routine inventory checks. As part of his job, he was supposed to ensure that all areas of the building were secure, which included noting any obvious changes or disturbances. The storage room, which should have remained relatively static, showed signs of regular disturbance despite no official authorization for access. Remained oblivious to the growing scrutiny. His success in avoiding detection had made him increasingly careless about covering his tracks. He had stopped being as careful about his timing and had begun taking more valuable items more frequently. In his mind, he had cracked the system and could continue his operation indefinitely without consequences. The stage was being set for a confrontation that would shatter his illusion of invincibility. James had gathered enough evidence to be certain that something illegal was occurring, and his military-trained instincts told him that the situation was escalating toward a point where direct intervention would be necessary. The question was no longer whether would be caught, but when and how the inevitable confrontation would unfold. The evening that would change everything started like any other Tuesday for. He had spent the day making routine sales calls and attending a mundane staff meeting where Mrs. Williams discussed quarterly targets with her usual lack of enthusiasm. Barely paid attention, his mind focused on the premium wireless earbuds he had spotted in the storage room the previous week. They were still in their original packaging, marked for disposal despite being worth nearly $300 retail. As 6 o'clock approached, executed his familiar routine. He organized papers on his desk to create the impression of ongoing work, made a few unnecessary follow-up calls to clients who had already ended their business day, and sent a couple of emails that could have easily waited until morning. By 6:15, the office floor was empty except for the distant sound of vacuum cleaners being operated by the cleaning crew on the floor below. James began his evening security round at exactly 6:20, following the same systematic pattern he had maintained for years. However, tonight was different. Over the past 2 weeks, he had compiled enough evidence to confirm his suspicions about its activities. The security footage showed a clear pattern of unauthorized access to the third floor, and his physical inventory of the storage room had revealed multiple missing items that corresponded precisely with late-night visits. Tonight, James had made a decision. Rather than continuing to gather evidence, he would confront the situation directly. His military background had taught him the importance of decisive action when a situation required intervention. He had already his supervisor at Meridian Protection Services and had contacted the building management company to inform them of the suspected theft. Made his way to the elevator at 6:35, pressing the button for the third floor with the same confidence he had displayed for months. The elevator ride seemed routine, giving him no indication that his activities had been detected. He stepped out onto the third floor and walked casually toward the storage room, fishing the unauthorized key from his pocket as he approached the door. The storage room was exactly as he had left it during his previous visit. Rows of shelves containing various electronic devices, office supplies, and outdated equipment created a maze of potential opportunities. Had learned to navigate the room efficiently, knowing exactly where the most valuable items were located and which ones would be least likely to be missed immediately. He located the premium earbuds quickly, along with a portable Bluetooth speaker that had caught his attention during his last visit. As he examined the items, calculating their potential resale value, felt the familiar rush of excitement that came with successfully executing his scheme. In his mind, he was still the clever operator who had outsmarted the system. James had positioned himself strategically on the third floor, using his knowledge of the building's layout to remain undetected while maintaining visual contact with the storage room entrance. He had disabled the elevator's call button on the third floor, ensuring that would have to use the stairwell to leave, which would require passing directly by James's position. The security guard waited patiently, allowing enough time to complete his theft before intervening. James understood the importance of catching criminals in the act rather than merely documenting suspicious behavior. His goal was to create an undeniable situation that would result in immediate consequences rather than prolonged investigation. Inside the storage room, had filled his laptop bag with the selected items and was preparing to leave when he heard footsteps in the hallway outside. His heart rate immediately increased, but he tried to remain calm, assuming it was just routine maintenance or cleaning staff who wouldn't question his presence. He had successfully talked his way out of similar encounters before. James stepped into view as emerged from the storage room, creating a situation that neither man could simply walk away from. The security guard was positioned between and the elevator, holding a clipboard and wearing the serious expression that had intimidated countless individuals during his military service. "Good evening, mister," James said in a calm but authoritative voice. "I need to speak with you about your activities in this storage room." Felt his confidence waver for the first time in months, but his instinct was to rely on the charm and quick thinking that had always served him well in difficult situations. He forced a smile and adjusted the strap of his laptop bag, trying to appear casual despite the weight of the stolen items inside. "Oh, hey there," replied, attempting to sound surprised but friendly. "I was just retrieving some old presentation materials for a client meeting tomorrow. Mrs. Williams asked me to grab them before I left tonight." James had anticipated this type of response. His experience had taught him that people caught in compromising situations typically resort to plausible-sounding explanations that are difficult to immediately verify. However, he had done his homework and was prepared for attempts at deception. "I see," James responded, making a note on his clipboard. "And do you have authorization from Mrs. Williams or building management to access this storage area after hours? Because according to my records, this room is supposed to be restricted access." Felt the first real surge of panic, but he fought to maintain his composure. His mind raced through possible responses, settling on a strategy that had worked for him in previous challenging situations. Projection of authority combined with mild indignation. "I'm sure there's just some miscommunication here," said, allowing a slight edge to creep into his voice. "I'm a senior sales representative with the company, and I have legitimate business reasons for being here. I'm not sure why security would be questioning my activities." James remained unmoved by his attempt to shift the dynamic of their interaction. The security guard had dealt with countless individuals who believed they could intimidate or manipulate their way out of consequences, and he recognized the tactics being employed. "Mister, I'm going to need you to open your bag and show me what you've removed from this storage room," James said firmly. "I've been monitoring unauthorized access to this area, and I have reason to believe that items have been taken without proper authorization." The words hit like a physical blow. The realization that his activities had been under surveillance shattered his assumption that he had been operating undetected. His mind frantically searched for an escape route, but James's position and demeanor made it clear that avoidance was no longer an option. "This is ridiculous," said, his voice rising slightly. "I'm not going to submit to some random search based on your suspicions. I know my rights and I don't have to cooperate with this harassment." James had reached the point where diplomacy was no longer effective. His training and experience told him that was going to continue denying and deflecting unless confronted with undeniable evidence. The security guard reached for his radio to contact building management and local authorities. "Mister, you can cooperate voluntarily, or I can contact the police and building security to resolve this situation officially," James said. "But you're not leaving this floor until we've cleared up these discrepancies." Realized that his usual tactics were failing completely. The security guard was not intimidated by his bluster or swayed by his attempts at charm. For the first time in years, found himself in a situation where his ability to talk his way out of consequences was utterly ineffective. The laptop bag containing the stolen electronics suddenly felt impossibly heavy, and became acutely aware that he was trapped in a situation that could result in serious legal consequences. His mind raced through possible explanations or escape routes, but James's methodical approach and professional demeanor made it clear that this confrontation would not end with a simple misunderstanding. The hallway of the third floor had become the stage for a confrontation that would determine whether months of theft would finally result in accountability, or whether he could somehow find a way to salvage a situation that was rapidly spiraling beyond his control. The standoff in the third-floor hallway continued for several tense moments as desperately searched for an escape from his deteriorating situation. James maintained his position between and the elevator, his military bearing and calm professionalism creating an atmosphere of inevitable accountability that had never experienced before. Made one final attempt to regain control of the situation, drawing upon every manipulation tactic he had learned throughout his life. He straightened his shoulders, forced confidence into his voice, and attempted to redirect the conversation toward James's authority rather than his own actions. "Look, I don't know what kind of power trip you're on here, but you're just a security guard," said, his voice carrying a tone of condescension that he hoped would undermine James's confidence. "You can't detain me or search my personal belongings without probable cause. I'm going to report this harassment to your supervisor and building management." James had encountered this exact strategy countless times during his military service and security career. Individuals caught in compromising situations often attempted to challenge authority when other tactics failed. However, James had prepared for this moment by ensuring he had proper authorization and evidence to support his actions. "Mister, I have documented evidence of your unauthorized access to this storage room over the past 6 weeks," James replied calmly, consulting his detailed logbook. "I have security footage showing you entering this area at times when you had no legitimate business on this floor. I also have inventory records showing missing items that correspond exactly with your visits." The revelation that his activities had been monitored so thoroughly struck like a physical blow. His assumption that he had been operating undetected crumbled completely, replaced by the horrifying realization that evidence of his theft had been accumulating for weeks. His face visibly paled as the implications became clear. James continued his methodical presentation of evidence, reading specific dates and times from his logbook with military precision. "September 14th at 6:42 p.m., you accessed this floor despite having no scheduled work requiring third-floor access. September 21st at 7:15 p.m., you were observed leaving this storage room carrying items not documented in any official inventory transfer. October 3rd at 6:55 p.m., security cameras recorded you entering the storage area with empty hands and leaving with a bulging laptop bag." Each entry in James's logbook hammered another nail into the coffin of denial. The security guard had been building an ironclad case while believed he was operating with complete impunity. The detailed documentation made it impossible for to claim coincidence or misunderstanding. "Furthermore," James continued, "I've confirmed with your supervisor, Mrs. Williams, that you have never been authorized to access this storage area, and she has no knowledge of any legitimate business requiring your presence here after hours." The mention of Mrs. Williams sent a wave of panic through his mind. If James had already contacted his supervisor, then his employment was certainly in jeopardy regardless of any legal consequences. Realized that his carefully constructed life was collapsing around him in real time. Desperate to salvage something from the disaster, attempted one final gambit. He reached for his phone, hoping to create confusion or buy time by threatening to call someone with authority over James. However, James had anticipated this move and was prepared to counter it. "I wouldn't recommend making any calls right now, mister," James said firmly. "I've already contacted building management, my supervisor at Meridian Protection Services, and the local police department. Detective Sarah Martinez from the downtown precinct is on her way to investigate this incident." The mention of police involvement shattered S's last vestige of hope. What had begun as a seemingly clever way to supplement his income had escalated into a criminal matter that would follow him for the rest of his life. His hands began to shake as the full weight of his situation became undeniable. James could see that was finally beginning to comprehend the severity of his circumstances. The security guard had observed this transformation countless times. The moment when someone realizes that their actions have consequences that cannot be charmed, manipulated, or talked away. "Mister, you have two options at this point," James explained with professional detachment. "You can cooperate fully by opening your bag and providing a complete account of what you've taken from this storage room, or you can continue to deny and deflect until the police arrive to search your belongings and formally charge you with theft." Stood frozen in the hallway, clutching his laptop bag containing the stolen electronics that would serve as undeniable proof of his crimes. His mind raced through scenarios of arrest, prosecution, loss of employment, and the destruction of his reputation. For the first time in his adult life, he faced a situation where his charm and manipulation skills were completely useless. The sound of elevator doors opening announced the arrival of Detective Martinez and building management representatives. Watched helplessly as his world collapsed around him, realizing that James had orchestrated this confrontation with military precision, leaving no avenue for escape or deception. Detective Martinez was a 15-year veteran of the police force who specialized in property crimes. She had worked with James on several previous cases and respected his thorough approach to evidence gathering. As she approached the scene, she could immediately assess the situation based on James's radio communication and the body language of both men. "Good evening," Detective Martinez said professionally. "Mister, I understand you've documented suspected theft from this storage area. Mister, I'm Detective Martinez with the Downtown Police Department. I need to speak with you about your activities in this building." Found himself unable to speak as the reality of his situation crystallized completely. The laptop bag containing stolen electronics felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, and his usual confidence had evaporated entirely. He was no longer the smooth-talking sales representative who could talk his way out of any situation. He was just another criminal who had been caught by someone more professional and dedicated than he had anticipated. James handed Detective Martinez his comprehensive logbook, security footage documentation, and inventory records. The detective reviewed the materials quickly, nodding with approval at the thoroughness of the evidence. Realized that James had built a case that would be virtually impossible to defend against in court. "Mister," Detective Martinez said formally, "based on the evidence provided by building security, I'm placing you under arrest for theft of company property. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As the handcuffs clicked into place, finally understood the true cost of his arrogance. James had never been just a security guard sitting behind a desk. He was a trained professional who took his responsibilities seriously and had the skills necessary to thoroughly investigate and document criminal activity. The stolen electronics were recovered from his laptop bag, providing physical evidence that corroborated James's detailed surveillance records. His employment was immediately terminated, and he faced felony charges that would result in a permanent criminal record, substantial fines, and potential imprisonment. In the weeks that followed, learned that his assumptions about security guards, authority figures, and his own cleverness had been catastrophically wrong. James became a reminder that professional competence and dedication could overcome any amount of charm or manipulation. Eventually pleaded guilty to multiple counts of theft and was sentenced to community service, probation, and restitution payments that would follow him for years. His career in sales ended permanently, as no reputable company would employ someone with a felony conviction for theft. James continued his work with the same professionalism and attention to detail that had exposed his criminal enterprise. The case became a training example for other security personnel, demonstrating the importance of systematic observation, detailed documentation, and patient investigation. The storage room was secured with additional protocols, but James knew that the real deterrent was not technology or locks, but the understanding that someone was always watching, always documenting, and always prepared to ensure that actions have consequences. Had learned this lesson in the most costly way possible, discovering that some people cannot be charmed, manipulated, or intimidated into looking the other way when justice is at stake.